Oh, we're live. Okay. Hi, Sammy. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hi, Grace. Thanks for having me.
Okay, to start with the show, I would love for. Okay, so I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing sponsor. So this episode is brought to you by Verivend. If you are a GP or LP looking to simplify the capital raising and deployment process, Verivend is here to help. Trusted by over 800 funds and managing more than $2 billion in transactions, Verivend offers a secure, streamlined payment platform designed specifically for private capital markets. Say goodbye to manual reconciliation and repeated follow up. Raise and deploy capital faster and with greater transparency. Ready to make your fund operation smoother? Visit Verivend.com and see how easy it can be. Okay, to start the show, I would love for the audience to learn more about you. So obviously you met Dion at Palantir and you guys have co-founded the company together. Now you're the CEO. Why don't we start with like what were some core lessons you've learned early on in your career that kind of shape you into who you are today?
Awesome. Well, great to be here, Grace. Thanks again. So, gosh, Dion and I actually started Forethought when we were 24, essentially, and back then, I'm so grateful that we had the courage, more so him, to be honest, to do that. One of the core lessons is just jump in, because if you think about all of the ways in which something could go wrong, you're just never going to actually do it. And that's probably the single biggest thing. Once you're in it, there's all these challenges that come your way, but you're in it, so you have to solve for them, and more often than not you do, and you end up somewhere great. So go for something big, go for something ambitious. We have to make those decisions, even within the startup, every other week, and that's kind of one lesson. Another one on a more practical level is, don't put the cart before the horse, so to speak. Really nail the product before you go spend too much on distribution. And so when we started the company, we were excited, but we probably didn't understand the market that we were in as well as we should have. And then we actually won TechCrunch Disrupt Battlefield, which was a really cool moment for the company, and that propelled us to raise some more money. And with money comes expectations, and so we had to kind of spend more on faster growth, and we essentially focused on that instead of maybe the core of the product. We were still a small company, and we should have just really focused on nailing the experience and then let the distribution come after, to the extent that you have to make a trade-off. That's not always the case, but yeah, that's probably another lesson.
Well, I actually really like the second lesson just because we like recently had a lot of like great guests. One of the guests, they were like very emphasizing on marketing, and I feel like like basically people were saying that like OpenAI was better than well, Anthropic have a better product, but like OpenAI is more popular because of the marketing. But though I don't fully completely consent to that, I feel like they both have a great product, but and then people were like really focusing on marketing because of like AI. Essentially, everyone's building like GPT wrapper. A lot of the times, they don't have the core differentiation from the technology end. So people are really focusing on marketing. So I feel that sentiment is like very popular these days. But like hearing you talking about like product first, it's like very obviously. I feel like that's a very core competency. Like having a great product is a really great core competency. Speaking of building the product, why don't we start with like the Forethought original product, and then like how did it evolve into what it is today in the past like 7 years?
Yeah, awesome. So we launched Forethought at the end of 2018,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, at TechCrunch Disrupt. At the time, our product offering was really constrained to an augmentation tool, so like a co-pilot
Mhm.
for customer support agents. There were a few reasons for that, but that's what we started off with, and we saw at the time that maybe the tech wasn't quite there for um, customers to feel very comfortable putting AI in front of their customers. And then whether the tech was there or not, it was clear that just the the atmosphere, kind of the general opinion was not there yet, and in a way that's very different today. We always had a vision to being more of this AI across the enterprise, really customer facing use cases, not just support. And we're starting to get more into that finally now. But yeah, I would say we were a little bit ahead of our time, and not to toot our own horns or anything. That's both good and bad. Generally, I think it's good, and we're very grateful. Our product evolved over time. So when COVID happened, we had a few of our customers that were using us for augmentation that started really running into a lot of scaling issues. Support volumes were through the roof. You had customers with a lot of confusion around, what happens now. And then at the same time, you had the support staff not able to go to the office and not able to work. And so we had to scramble to help our customers offer self-service options to their customers, and we hacked something overnight, and eventually that's become our what is now our Solve offering, which is the self-service offering, and kind of everything in between. We have a suite of products today that are complementary and try to tackle every piece of the customer journey. Happy to talk about that more if you'd like, but that's kind of been the evolution.
For sure. I definitely want to learn more about so since we also have some other customer service AI product leaders or founders on the show, and I wonder what's your kind of strategic vision for this. So at the beginning, it was I guess selling to enterprise, and then selling the solution of an AI product that helps you making your customer service cost goes down, and then maybe improve customer loyalty. But I guess how do you think about which subsector to go first? So some people went with the bank situation, and then some people went with e-commerce. And I guess how do you identify which subsector has the most amount of profit margin, and how were you guys kind of approaching building the product for if there's a specific subsector that you guys were targeting more?
Yeah, great question. We didn't really focus on subsectors, to be honest. I think there's so much low-hanging fruit and so much inefficiency there today that as much as possible, if you can get in front of as many types of companies as you can, that's what we've opted to do. And I think others have made a similar decision there. So the key thing though is one of the ways that you benefit from using Forethought the most, say, as opposed to another vendor, is usually how we can leverage your existing data on day one and on an ongoing basis. And so if you're a very small startup and everything is on fire, you probably don't want to optimize for using us, and maybe you can use maybe you're using Intercom or something like that for SMBs, and you will just use the out of the box thing there, and that works for now. The moment that I think you have, some amount of volume that AI can actually learn from and lead to mimicking the level of support that you have with your team, rather than kind of have to go piece together things and translate them into machine language or AI language. That's one thing that we do very well. We do it across all these subsectors. So that's been our strategy.
For sure. I wonder, so since right now we are seeing there's more major players that are going after the customer service customer service subsector as well. What I guess did your strategy kind of shift at the beginning? There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, but I feel because of the market, it's getting a lot more competitive than I guess when you guys started 7 years ago. What do you see as the quote-unquote low-hanging fruit today in the customer service market? And I guess what does the go-to-market motion kind of look like to sell to these enterprises, since I feel the sales cycle would be so long?
Yeah, great question. It hasn't been that long recently, because it seems like there's kind of this moment now where folks are, realizing there's been a technological shift, and what's our AI strategy, and we need to pick somebody. So we're seeing these RFIs, RFPs, and sometimes you can tell that an enterprise has a person who's picked up on all the buzzwords and put it in there, and sometimes it doesn't quite make all that much sense. But that's then we have to come in and say what we can offer, and then try to educate the customer a little more. But these decisions are happening relatively quickly these days. Like even big enterprises, 3 to 6 months sometimes. Sorry, I forget the first part of the question.
The first part is like if there's like a new low-hanging fruit, since like the market is a little bit more competitive. I like what you said about like, the companies are dying for the solutions because though it's maybe more competitions, but like it's more like market maturity to like kind of accept the product or like trying to go after the product. The other question is like, is there, I guess, like any go-to-market motion that you guys are approaching to kind of like line up the customer or like convert them into a paying customer?
Yeah, great question. So yes to all of that. One big thing that we changed about a year and a half ago at Forethought is that we started really tailoring our sales process around doing these free trials, like 2-week free trials where we are actively trying to get you to agree to a free trial, which is not something that we used to do before. And we found a lot of success with that. What that has done is there is a lot of confusion in the market about all these buzzwords. What does it actually mean? How does it work? Everybody kind of sounds the same. And so offering those where some competitors maybe don't offer them for whatever reason has been helpful. And then getting your hands on the product and these things where we talk about learning from your data being an advantage. It sounds like something, but then when you actually see it in the product, it looks like on day one, here's these 87 different agents that we've automatically created for you, and you see that and you use it, and that's really helped us not only get the win rates up, but actually shorten the sales cycle, because we're kind of opinionated around how this free trial should go, and we're setting expectations early on what the success criteria are, and involving executives that eventually are going to have to be involved in that decision making, just to come in at some point during that trial and kind of avoid the situations where things get stuck even after success.
I wonder, so like let's talk about I guess like the product and like I guess like maybe go to market again. So I wonder, so since you guys have various different type of clients such as like Airtable, Grammarly, or like Cohere, or like Cotopaxi, like I can never pronounce the name, but though I see their logo everywhere. But and Datadog and like some other companies, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but like I feel like those are very different type of companies. How do you build the 78 agents like for these companies all together? Do you feel like the customer service kind of questions are all similar, or like how do you kind of like implement their own like customer database to help the customer like generate like tailored solution towards each subcategory?
I love that question. Yeah, and that goes back to really what we tout as our primary advantage is that we're actually ingesting your historical conversations with your customers, whereas most people don't actually do that in the market. It starts more as a blank canvas. What would you like to configure? Usually it's these knowledge base RAG systems, and that's now doing quite well. So going back to your low hanging fruit, that's definitely the lowest hanging fruit, and for the most part, other vendors do that well too. But then when you go beyond this knowledge retrieval thing, which obviously your support team has been doing, resolving actual end-to-end issues for customers, that kind of thing, there isn't a great way to teach the AI how to do that. And so you kind of have to start from scratch and try to understand how this interface lets you teach the AI things, and then you go from there one at a time. The difference with us is that we have these 100+ integrations. We're connecting to your CRM's ticketing system, all that, and we have opinions about how conversations go in customer service, and generally that actually holds up. You have a customer asking a question and you have a back and forth conversation, so that piece is not too complicated. But then the actual substance and the content of what's going on there is wildly different, as you mentioned, Datadog versus Cotopaxi or somebody else. And that's where having these pipelines and models that are fine-tuned on your pre-processed data that we take in leads to, on day one, being able to have a very opinionated vision of this is what automation should look like, rather than say, go ahead, support operations person. You now have this new tool, and it's up to you to completely design the customer-facing experience of the organization. So good luck. It's a lot of responsibility.
I wonder, so like, who do you sell to? Is that like the chief customer service officer at each like big organization? And like, what's her, I guess, current solution? I'm sure like some of them have like bots themselves. Like I feel like I definitely chat with the WordPress bot since like 2007, but like not 2007, but like a long time ago. But like, how do you guys, I guess, like, so how do you think about like fine tuning the data that they provide you? So like, what are some stuff that they would provide you that like, is that like just like past like emails, or like what does a kind of like database kind of look like? And then what kind of stuff do you generically have to do to like clean the data? What kind of thought pattern or like patterns that you're trying to find to like make sure that your model answers this specific thing very specifically?
Yeah, that second one is a slightly more complicated answer, which I'll try to touch on. On the first one, usually we're talking to the VP of customer experience, or chief customer experience officer, or often COO, sometimes product. And so they're involved. Usually there might be someone more at the director level who's involved day to day. And that's kind of been the case really across all these verticals. Part of that free trial, and definitely part of implementation, is that you're connecting us to these systems so that we can show you how we can leverage that data. There might be a security review required. One of the things that we do that's helpful in kind of circumventing that is that we're not actually storing the data as is in our system. A lot of things we don't store, we just process. Other things we redact before we store them. So that's kind of all part of the process. Some of the things we're looking for once we have that data is, one of the benefits, actually, part of how Dion and I rationalized to ourselves that the timing was right. The AI technology was getting there, but then also everybody was on standardized platforms in a way that 10 years before that it was really not the case. And so you don't have to do this whole mapping or ETL process where it's bespoke for every company and their data model looks completely different. If somebody is on Zendesk, if they're on Front, if they're on ServiceNow, whatever, we know what that looks like. And we have this connector layer that's in charge of mapping and transforming things automatically into the concepts that we look for, that we think are universal in these interfaces. Like, this is the customer, this is an agent, this is another agent who swooped in, this is the time in between these things, this is the question, the responses, the follow-ups, etc. So we're looking for those, and I'll give you like the shortest high-level description of this. We're looking to understand both the questions and the answers in light of each other, and so there's this setup where you can learn to represent questions and answers better for this domain of language, because for an organization, all their questions are going to be in that narrow space of language, and you want to be able to actually draw the boundaries more accurately. And so you take all this data, you train these models that know about all this data, know about each other actually, and you end up with something that's more capable of representing these questions and answers and understanding the nuances. Is this appropriate for this, or is it only relevant? That kind of thing. I hope that made sense.
For sure. I actually so before I jump on our Zoom, our live today, I was like watching your other interview with like a product leader. So I wonder, I saw there's like a decision tree that you guys made back then. Do you guys still like follow the same decision patterns, or like if you want to showcase like the back end, we can also do that if like that's an option for you.
Yeah.
So how do you think about like, I guess like, let's say I'm a Cotopaxi. I can never pronounce it, but okay, but I'm like a fan of their product. So, how do you think about, let's say I hand you like all my customer emails, as you mentioned about like, I guess like there is, questions to respond to. Maybe like you guys have like a questionnaire and then you match it with whatever their database is. But like, I guess like what would be the top things that you try to ask the data to find out? So like, how, as a non-technical person, like how I would think about it, it's kind of like you dump a PDF onto OpenAI, and then like at the beginning maybe it's like cleaning the data, there's like model going up, like, so there's like a lot of like different unstructured data, and then you kind of consolidate the unstructured data into, I guess, structured data. So and then you pull threads from it. So for example, maybe you ask them like, hey, what is the most frequent answered question from the customer profile? Or do you categorize them into 5 different subcategories? So for example, maybe you ask them like, hey, here's like, what's the top 5 question? And then why do you do like the reasoning, like basically, I guess, like thinking about why these questions exist, and then like how do you improve the workflow, and then how do you even demonstrate the result from your system to the clients? Because I'm thinking, if I'm building the product, I really want, like if I'm like a buyer of the product, I really want to see, oh, okay, so you save us like $5 million through customer service connection. How do you kind of like make sure the matrix is like generally in the right direction with whatever they're thinking?
Awesome. Okay, so you touched on a lot of big things there. Let me see. Can I actually share my screen?
Yeah, you can click on present, I think.
Okay. All right.
I think it's next to our like human icon. There's like a present or invite. Or there's a oh, okay, I see you. Okay, here.
Okay.
Oh no.
Cool. Okay, you can see this?
Yeah.
All right, great. So we're starting off here. This is a demo environment, but we have this integrations page, and this is what from the admin side you'd be looking at. We have, I mentioned a lot of different connectors here that you can connect in a self-serve way. So say we've connected like Zendesk, Salesforce, all these things. We'll start to ingest those recent conversations, and the fine-tuning and the pipelines that run on that. The result gets shown in this Discover bucket here. So we're connected to your knowledge bases. We can do RAG and knowledge retrieval on all of that, and that works great. But then you have all this action-oriented stuff, and we actually group it, kind of like what you were saying, into these topics and subtopics. And so this looks different for every one of our customers. In this case, this is a subset of data redacted, put in this demo environment where it's a fintech example. And we're saying we think we have these 115 distinct topics that your customers have reached out about, and we're grouping them in this way. Here's how it's evolved over time. Here's all these different KPIs you might care about, customer sentiment. We can jump into any of these and actually take a look at the tickets. And so the reason why this is helpful is this is part of your kind of data analysis that you do anyway, except it's done at a much more granular level and in a consistent way. But then it's really helpful for automation. And so we have this automation tab here where there's a couple of things going on. Yes, we can do RAG and respond with the content that's in your knowledge base, and that's great. And we'll show you how much we can cover with that. This is going a step further here. So learning from how your agents on your support team have responded in the past to customers. If the answers were informational but not covered in your knowledge base, then we call that a gap, and we'll generate the missing content. So this is an example of that here. We're not making this up. It comes from these historical tickets, which you can cycle through some of these samples here. You'll notice the PII get redacted. So this is some of the information that we're looking for. It's a mix of embedding models, clustering models, LLM models kind of happening through pipelines. Does that make sense so far?
For sure. I wonder, so like, how do you reflect the realized impact? Because, for example, potential savings XYZ dollar. So does it typically, so I guess like like I guess like how do you kind of like showcasing the result? I feel like that's probably one of the most like complicated part.
Well, so in our space, actually, it's less complicated than other ones. Which one of the reasons why I think this space and maybe AI agents for coding have been the most successful. The ROI is clear and the tech is there. So there's these juicy dollar numbers. You noticed we sprinkle everywhere. So this is based on an estimate that a company will give us. We're not charging based on that estimate. We charge based on outcomes, which we have kind of more standardized pricing there. But we're saying here's all these different flows that we think require having an AI agent for them that can actually look at personalized information about this user, maybe take action on their behalf. You don't have to guess at which things are worth creating or even what those automations will look like. So this is what we call an auto flow. So you mentioned the decision trees from like years ago. So we now actually rely on these auto flows instead. Within these auto flows, you can insert blocks that are more scripted, step-by-step execution. But generally, unless there's a very strong compliance reason to do that, you don't do it. And then here, what you see is this policy is actually guiding the behavior of the AI. And this is a policy that's just text. You can create this from scratch. You can modify this. But the benefit is that this was generated automatically for you by what we call our Discover product from essentially reverse engineering these policies from your customers, like from the historical conversations. And you can, this is called an agent because it can take actions like hit your different APIs to get the status of the account, do all of that. You can preview what this would look like, etc. So that's the idea there. I don't know if I covered some of the things you were asking about.
Yeah, totally. I guess like what do you think about like the most important 3 things that customers care about? Since like I think let's say the VP of customer service at one of these companies, how is their metrics being like kind of like met? Because like they can't just be like, okay, we're using Forethought and then my job's done and then their job's like gone, right? So what goes into their day-to-day, and then like how does Forethought kind of plays into their different like departments within their ecosystem at each of their companies?
Yeah, great question. It's actually a little bit top of mind now too. So there are out-of-the-box metrics that CX leaders tend to care about, especially when they're focused on automation. So things like resolution rates, escalation rates, CSAT, other explicit feedback metrics from the customers. They care about how much containment is there, how much are things really like not making it to my team to have to handle, but then also what is the experience there. And so I mentioned CSAT, but then there's also things like QA that another AI model will perform on the conversations once they're done. How relevant were the conversations? Did the customer seem to drop off instead of actually have their issue get resolved? So all these things are out of the box. And then outside of that, there's your own custom metrics that you can define, which might be like conversion ratios. Let's say you want to turn a customer into a more valuable customer. When does that happen? It's defined as it happens when we execute this action that upgrades the account. Great. I want to attach an event there. I want to define this metric as an aggregation or a formula of that. And then I want to look at that as one of the top line metrics. So different departments can do that, and it really depends on the company. But we've tried to build as flexible as a platform as possible.
What is CSAT?
CSAT is like customer satisfaction scores. Usually there's a couple different ways of doing it. For us, it's you can actually pick, but our default is scores from 1 to 5.
Got it.
Customers will submit.
I wonder, okay, so I'm just like envisioning the future of like these kind of customer success agents. Like, so when I'm thinking like, it's a future, just like when I put in my order number and then the AI could just default actually understand what's going on with my problem and then immediately solve it for me, or like what would be the kind of like end game for customer service kind of look like, and then where are we right now in this?
Yeah, so I mean that's actually already possible. Obviously, like knowing that there's an issue and solving it will depend on how much context we have and whether we've seen conversations like that in the past or we haven't. You have to kind of teach us how to do that, but that's all possible today. I think going even a step further in your vision, instead of the customer needing to say, this is my order ID, that you actually know everything about the customer already, in the same way that the product team knows about it, right? Like the customer's logged in, everything about them. You don't have to ask them these questions. And the vision is really not treating these customer-facing interfaces as a separate entity from your product experience. It's really, and historically it has been, so that's why that's been the case. But you're in the product, you face an issue, I need to contact support, and you're taken to this usually generic experience that's not brand specific, like totally different, and your product team doesn't own what happens there, and that's more of a support thing. Over time, I hope, and I think that that's what's going to happen, is these interfaces will be much more embedded in your product and will know the customer more intimately. And it's beyond support. And I don't know if I'll be boring with this, but I have a vision for where this is going. Like historically, you have a sales team, a support team, success team, marketing team, billing team, and all these different teams interface with customers in some ways. Just usually it's been done asynchronously, either through email or let's schedule a meeting and that kind of thing. Now that you have these conversational interfaces where it's not asynchronous and it's automated, it's a machine doing it, and you can get your answer or whatever it is right away. There's actually a big benefit to consolidating what that interface looks like, and not have the sales bot and the pipeline bot and the billing bot, because customers don't know where they're supposed to go, and they'd rather not have to go different places. So if you can have this AI layer across these different customer-facing teams, there is a benefit to that, and that's what we're trying to do.
Can you elaborate that a little bit on like the sales bot, billing bot, and there's like an AI across? So basically you're saying there's like sub bots on that. Like, so for example, I go on Shopify and then someone asks me, hey, do you want to buy the shoes? Or like, we'll give you like a 10% off coupon to buy the shoes. And then billing bot is like, I mean, I just know billing. Like, I feel like it's not a bot. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but it's typically just like, oh, someone, like, let's say I click like 3 things and I check out, and then they send me, are you sure you want to buy these? And then I click yes, and then done. Right. So like, what is a billing bot? And then like, how do they kind of like work together right now?
So the idea is that it's not a fully separate bot, and that's the benefit. Yeah, it's great if it's a separate bot. Even that is like quite a significant kind of improvement from historically. You just have to wait to talk to the team. there's a lot of friction there. But yeah, instead of having a bot on this page and a different bot on this other page, if it's really, wherever you are, there is an interface with which you can converse with like a representative of the company. People have to specialize, but an AI or an interface, does not have to specialize. It can really just tackle whatever your concern is now, or even proactively outreach. And so this one interface that can handle all these different conversations you may want to have with the company. So I'll give you a quick little thing. This is an example of more of a sales use case, but customers who you can actually recommend something like this to, and say like, buy this, etc. You can do this whole experience. If they also have a support question, like you don't want to send them to a different interface for that. Oh, this is support, that's not my purview. Ideally you don't do that, and you don't have to. You can consolidate.
Got it. So basically you kind of like sell and then answering their question at the same time. They're just like basically a real life sales agent, but in the digital format. And I wonder, so like, how do you?
The same customer, sorry to interrupt, the same customer will have, these different conversations with your organization. Just sometimes they'll have multiple at the same time. But even just going in, you don't know which one it's going to be. So to expect them to be at the right place with the right bot is not usually how it goes.
Right place with the right bot. I wonder, so like when you're doing these kind of like new trials, like do you have data to support that people actually like that? Because like sometimes people just want to immediately get their problem resolved. They're like not there to buy more things. Obviously having a second quote unquote like tiny billboard, it's like more likely people will discover your other products. But like, sometimes when I'm like trying to return something or trying to, solve a problem, I was not in the thought of like I'm gonna buy more stuff. It's more of like I need my money back immediately. So do you have like any data to support that people actually will buy more to like when they're like trying to sell me something at the same time?
Interesting. So I thought you meant maybe our free trial motion in general, whether that's been successful, or do you mean more like?
I mean will people actually want all the bots to be together? So like, I mean, I think this is like definitely something I'm sure like some subsector of people will be like, oh, intrigued by, even distracted by the new product. But like I don't think like a lot of the times, like for example, if I'm chatting with like Amazon, I'm just literally trying to return the thing that I'm like I bought. But so how do you kind of like think of like, will this actually generate more revenue for you versus like cut losses?
So I got it. Yeah, definitely hear you on that. It has to be done tastefully, and it's actually, it wasn't really our sort of vision that we pushed on our customers, and we kind of always had this vision, but we thought we have to focus, and this is what we're doing right now. But actually, a lot of our customers were pulling us in those directions, whether they use it as a separate bot, which by the way can look like these chatbots, or could be like a voice agent or email or whatever, as a separate bot, a separate interface, or in the same interface. Generally, if you're behaving perfectly, which is a big statement, it is strictly superior to be able to do it in the same interface. Doesn't mean necessarily that somebody who comes in with a support question that you're proactively kind of shoving this other product down their throat, that would be worse for the customer experience, which there are ways to track that and try to optimize for. So it doesn't have to mean that. It just means that you can do it, and that these conversations where you are trying to upsell or convert or onboard happen, you just can now do them in the same interface.
I wonder, so like when like I guess like when you are like working with the customers, as you previously mentioned about like the freemium kind of sales motion. So like I guess like do you have like a stats on like how many people actually convert into the actual customer? And um like I guess also like what's a maybe this is like a very sensitive question, but like I guess like how much are people kind of like spending on customer service like each year? Maybe you can just give us the general data on that, and then how much would they spend on bots instead of like having actual human, or like is there even a human layer on the Forethought products? But or like how does the current customer support team kind of constructed in each
Yeah.
big companies?
Yeah, there's
Five
wide-ranging
questions.
answers.
Sorry. Yeah.
So just for the first point, I wouldn't call it a freemium model. It's actually still you have to talk to our team, and we're talking to mid-market to enterprises,
Mhm.
and so they really view this as a strategic purchase, and then they should. It's going to affect how they interact with all of their customers. So we're still kind of gating it by our qualification criteria. Do you have enough volume that this is going to be a successful partnership for both of us? And then once yes, we're really trying to get you to that free trial, which you have our team helping you with, and then you get our implementation team. So it's still an engagement like that. It's just getting to signature. By the time we're there, the product's halfway implemented, and you have a much better idea of whether it's a good fit for you. So I can share this number. We're very happy with where that is. Anytime somebody starts that free trial, we have a 70% win rate from there. So really high. And usually when we lose, it's not the right stakeholder, change of priorities, no budget, something like that. How much companies spend on support today really varies. And I'll give you like maybe a couple of data points. So you might have support reps in the US, and that might range from like 40K to 150K. It really depends. Are they more like technical support engineers versus maybe not, maybe early in their career? And then that works. It's a high level of care, but can be expensive. Other companies will use that model, but then also supplement with BPOs. And there the labor is less expensive in other markets, but they're kind of hired guns. And so there's this onboarding flow, and then things are a little more transactional, and you start to worry about quality there. In a way that with the AI, you actually have more control and more consistency around it. So that business model is getting a little bit disrupted by AI. And so yes, that's cheaper, but there are quality concerns. So it really depends. I think one thing that we also try to do is it's very obvious when you talk about ROI in terms of cost savings, saying that this is a conversation that would have turned into a case or a ticket that your team has to handle, and it didn't, and it had high CSAT. So great, this is a win. But then there's other things, right? Like if you have 2 days today before you can get back to your customer, but instead the AI can resolve that immediately, how much is that worth beyond the cost savings in terms of labor? And it gets hard to put a number on that. And often we work closely with our stakeholders at those organizations, and we're kind of feeding off of them what their priorities are and what the main KPIs they're tracking are.
I wonder, so like I think like for customer service, as a whole department, how much were they, you mentioned about like they would spend money on engineer, they would spend money on like, the technical support or like customer support in general. And like it's like 40K to 150K per month, or like are we talking about per year?
Sorry, per year per person there.
Per year per person. Okay. Per year per person, that's a lot actually. Wait, how many percent are on these teams?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a very critical department in companies. It's usually what breaks first if you don't staff it properly as your company's growing. And yeah, I mean that's really why we set out on this mission kind of in the first place. Like there are these bottlenecks for growth, for all businesses, and a lot of it is having to hire and train the right people and have them coordinate well together, and it gets harder and harder as you get bigger and bigger, and things slow down, and then we all know how that goes.
Yeah. Since you mentioned about like, branching out into sales or like other motions, but then like the subcategory of like how customer service is kind of like expand. So like I guess like the other part is like, I saw that like you guys have investor such as like the CEO of Writer or like some other like I guess like companies that are in the AI space that are like branching out to multiple different solutions within like different enterprises. How do you think about strategic partnership with like other kind of like AI companies that are expanding into like a different horizon within these like enterprise sales? Just enterprise in general.
Yeah. So as much as possible, if we can learn from each other, benefit from each other's customer bases, and offer complementary offerings, that would be ideal. So like Cartesia, for example, we have a great partnership with.
Oh yeah.
We use their voice AI, and that's not our core competency. Is what does the AI sound like, and can it accurately take these conversations and spit them out as nice sounding human conversations with all the long tail of problems that you can face there. That's a big problem. They focus on that, but at the same time, everything that goes with having a great customer facing AI agents platform, that's our focus, and so mutually beneficial in that way. There's a lot more partnerships that are possible outside of just technical partnerships, especially with AI companies. So more on the implementation side of things, solution integrators, or on the distribution side of things. We offer the solution. There are many private equity companies firms that have portfolio companies that are trying to be more efficient, and that's kind of a match made in heaven. So we've seen that be very successful.
I wonder, so for these like warm intros or I guess like partnerships, like how do you think about the client expansion side, since like you could go into any direction? So there is the Airtable of the world that's like kind of, they're very technical savvy, they could have just built their own bots. But there's also the Cotopaxi. I feel like they are very I guess like more towards like the traditional / like consumer like area. So how do you identify your perfect ICP too?
Great question. I mean, everybody is pretty sophisticated. The businesses you mentioned are. There are maybe older businesses where they have other priorities, and they're not going to dive into this domain too much and look to us to be the experts, which we love to do. So this question of ICP is definitely a huge one. I think right now, because everybody is on these standardized platforms, kind of 80% of the problem actually does look very similar, as long as you can understand the nuances of the language. And then it's kind of that remaining 20% of it, which we have what we call white glove service, and you'll have your own named resources from the Forethought team to help you get the most out of the AI, since this is a new way of doing things, and not everybody knows it. I would say on the point of, let's say like a very tech forward company building it themselves. The best way that I can put it is that, yes, AI is a lot easier to build than it used to be, and in many ways actually more successful. And kind of part of why it was hard before is that it wasn't all the way there. But it is still the case that building software in general has all the challenges that we know of, and then building an AI first piece of software actually has many more complications around ensuring reliability, testing, control, flexibility, but configurability, like all these things that are there in traditional software that just go up a level here. And so it is still the case that it's quite hard to build these things for yourselves, and just for the same reason that you don't build your own Zendesk or ticketing system or finance software, QuickBooks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You probably want to focus on your core competence, which is the other things you do. And
Mm-hmm.
in the limit, let's say that the AI software becomes as easy to deploy. There's all these standards that are agreed upon and such, which we're not there.
Mm-hmm.
It'll become like software. I still think there is a kind of competitive advantage to focusing on using the best tools out there and focus on your core competence instead.
Mm. I wonder, since like you guys just launched the first like multi-agent and omni-channel AI platform, um, like how was it differentiated from like I guess like the non multi-agent aspect? So you mentioned about like the 78 agent or like just like like I guess multi-agent. What does that kind of like entails like compared to like because as a customer person, as a customer in general, I can only feel like there's one agent interact with me. Like what is it meant to
Yeah.
have like multi-agent?
Yeah, great question. So you can think of multi-agent in a couple different ways. So
Mhm.
we have essentially your data analyst agent that
Mhm.
provides insights. You can ask it questions. That's kind of an agent that's on the admin facing side,
Mhm.
or like our co-pilot agent, which is
Mhm.
team member facing, kind of behind the firewall.
Mhm.
But then you can think of agents that are customer facing, like you have the refund, the refund agent, the reset password agent, the
Oh,
reactivate my
reset
account agent,
password
right?
agent.
And
Mhm.
so you know that all these things exist, and you kind of have an orchestrator that's in charge of, uh, based on the conversation and the context, choosing kind of the best agent to get the
Mhm.
job done. But as the conversation evolves, you might pick a different one. So that's the multi-agent piece. The omni-channel one is more meeting the customers wherever they are, wherever they come from, wherever they
Mhm.
prefer to be. And so organizations today will offer things like email support, sometimes chat support, sometimes phone call support, and they do that because it's kind of the preference of different segments of their customer base. They prefer to get help in those ways. And so if an organization can afford to staff up and service all these motions, they tend to do it. Sometimes they can't afford to and they don't do it, but
Mhm.
it still remains the case that their customer base, actually some of it, would prefer to pick up the phone instead of be conversing over chat. So the ability to supplement whatever the company is doing today. Maybe it has all these channels, doesn't have automation in them. Great, now they can have that. Or even if they don't have a phone channel or a live chat, but their customers would like them to, they can add that channel through Forethought. And then if, say, you're on the phone but you need to authenticate a customer, or they prefer to continue within the app on their phone, you can send them a text message and continue from there, for example. So this handoff across channels becomes important.
For sure. I want to be mindful of the time. Maybe we keep one real question and then a quick 30-second fire round. In terms of like growing your team, since like you started as a CTO, now you guys are, I'm sure it's like having a really big team. Let's just put it that way. So like, how do you think about like growing um the engineering team or like the resources and the product team? How do you, I guess, like think about what is like the core things that you need to actually build the multi-agent products, since like right now a lot of AI could just also build it like people kind of just accelerate the product building speed by AI a lot. So like who would you hire in the future to like actually build these products?
Yeah, the answer hasn't changed too much. I would say the kind of the researcher angle, which
Mhm.
we used to hire more researchers that would actually innovate on the underlying architecture of
Mhm.
models. We don't
Mhm.
need that as much, to be honest. We still
Mhm.
have more of a researcher profile that has deep intuition about the models and then
Mhm.
knows the best way to use them in an applied way. Aside from that, it's just, you're right, things have become more efficient. We've also learned to focus on customers more and push the pace more. And our team is quite tenured. Everybody's been here for a few years and knows our stack, knows the space, knows how to work well with each other. So we've been able to do a lot more without needing to grow our team at the same pace as before. I don't think that we're alone in this, but yeah, it's kind of same as always, minus that little change on the researcher side. If we know that we have all these very impactful ideas that our customers are pulling us to build, and we've designed them and we know what it looks like, but we're not building it fast enough, we'll go higher. And we are hiring right now, but we don't really see that as an acute problem today.
Totally. Okay, so I want to wrap with like a quick 1 minute fire round. What's your favorite book?
Favorite book, Amp It Up by Frank Slootman.
Oh, wow. That's a really popular book. Love that book. Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say our early investor, Manu Kumar.
Where can we find? Oh, wait. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Invite to a dinner party? I would have invited Kobe Bryant if I could. It's just a big inspiration to me growing up. Do I have to pick somebody alive?
Well, it's your party, so.
Alive? I honestly, I'd probably pick Frank Slootman.
Amazing. Where can we find you outside of work?
Playing tennis or pickleball with friends.
Oh, you sounds very Bay Area. But anyway, Sami, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a fun conversation.
Thank you so much. It's great chatting with you.
Okay, awesome. Let me